We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
He can say whatever he wants.
A straight-talking show where all voices are heard.
And, you know, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country.
There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor.
Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Daubney, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m, weekdays, here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Okwir, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, Dave.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Westminster, the ultimate clique.
And you're fighting like rats in a sack.
But here on the Camilla Tominey Show, we ask the questions the establishment media is too scared to ask.
OK, let me ask you a straight question, because I know you're a straight-talking politician.
Whether it's net zero, illegal immigration or law and order, nothing is off limits.
You had the power then.
Yeah, as I
and
say,
now you've lost it.
That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show that's fearless.
But no, let me finish my question if you don't mind, because it is my show.
Sundays at 9:30, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good evening, you're watching State of the Nation on GB News with me, Matt Goodwin. On tonight's show, Iran launches a barrage of missile strikes on Tel Aviv as all Israeli citizens are ordered into bomb shelters tonight. And Britain could finally be on track to publish full migrant crime statistics thanks to a new parliamentary amendment that could force the Labour government to reveal the information that they seem so keen to hide from you, the British taxpayer. Labour Minister Darren Jones, meanwhile, has claimed that he was misrepresented after he suggested that most small boat migrants are women and children. But unfortunately, Darren, we've got the receipts. And that's State of the Nation tonight with me, Matt Goodwin, starts right now. Now I'll also be joined tonight by my panel, political commentator Esther Kreku and broadcaster and journalist Zoe Grunwald. As ever, let me know your views tonight at gbnews.com/your say. Of course, you can reach us on X at GB News. And today, of course, you might have heard that it is GB News' 4th birthday. Well, happy birthday to the channel and everybody who has been watching it and supporting it over the last 4 years. It's been a wild ride, but we are still here, stronger than ever, so happy birthday to us. But now, let's just get more from the latest news and what's going on in the Middle East with Lewis Mackenzie.
Thanks, Matt. Good evening. It's just after 8 o'clock. We'll, of course, be keeping you up to date on everything happening in Israel. But for now, here are the other stories making the headlines. The sole survivor of the Air India crash has spoken from his hospital bed, saying he watched people die in front of his very eyes. The British national Viswash Kumar Ramesh said the plane felt like it was struck in the air before crashing into a medical college in Ahmedabad, killing 241 people. Tributes are pouring in as investigators search for answers. One black box has now been recovered as UK and US teams are joining the inquiry. There's been a 4th night of unrest in Northern Ireland as bricks and beer kegs were thrown at police in Portadown. The violence follows a peaceful protest in Ballymena on Monday over an alleged sexual assault, but police say it was hijacked by racist thugs. 41 officers have been injured while families had to hide in attics, and a leisure centre used as a shelter was torched. More than 15 arrests have been made so far. 7 men who sexually exploited 2 13-year-old girls in Rochdale have been convicted at Manchester Crown Court. The court were told the men groomed their victims as sex slaves, exploiting their vulnerabilities through a campaign of manipulation, which occurred between 2001 and 2006. The 7 men now await sentencing for their crimes. Patients in England are the first in the world to receive a new Trojan horse therapy that targets blood cancer with pinpoint precision. It works by smuggling toxic chemotherapy directly into myeloma cells, sparing healthy ones by cutting side effects. Clinical trials show it can halt the disease for nearly 3 times longer than current treatments. Around 1,500 patients a year could benefit. Doctors say this could be the start of a new era in cancer treatment. Well, those are your latest GB News headlines for now. I'm Lewis Mackenzie. More from me in an hour's time.
Well, welcome back to State of the Nation tonight with me, Matt Goodwin, and it is quite an evening. Iran tonight has launched hundreds of ballistic missiles towards Israel, as all Israeli citizens have been ordered into bomb shelters. Well, we can now speak with GB News Home and Security editor Mark White to get the latest. Mark, what do we need to know right now? Because this seems to be a very fast-moving situation.
Well, we're aware of 2 launches that the IDF have confirmed. 2 launches, waves of ballistic missiles that have launched from Iran, heading towards multiple targets in Israel. The Iranian Revolutionary Guards have confirmed that those ballistic missiles targeted military installations and other targets within Israel itself, although, of course, we saw on live images shots of Tel Aviv and shots of what looked like missile impacts, but the IDF have said this evening, and hopefully we can show you the live images from Tel Aviv this evening, or at least some of the images of those missiles impacting the ground, but the IDF confirming that actually what they were seeing, the explosions that we were hearing, were sounds of the interceptions of the Israeli missile defense systems intercepting these ballistic missiles and taking them out of the sky. And of course, in doing that, what you then have are pieces from these missiles that have been destroyed in the air coming down, sometimes from the interceptors themselves, and landing in areas like Tel Aviv. What we know already from the medical services in Tel Aviv is that 7 people have been injured, individuals who are described as being either lightly or moderately injured. No fatalities reported at this time. Now, the IDF are urging the media not to disclose specific targets, key locations that might have been struck, and we will abide by that, of course, because of real concerns that the Iranians are watching output with a view to realigning their targeting, that according to the IDF, except to say that there have been multiple impacts either by ballistic missiles or by debris from ballistic missiles. You're looking at Bethlehem there and also Tel Aviv on the right of the images. We've had 2 waves of ballistic missiles so far. It's quiet at the moment, but every expectation that, of course, there could be further waves in the coming minutes and hours.
Well, Mark White, thank you for the update. And of course, we're going to keep coming back to you throughout the show tonight just to keep up to date with what is going on in Israel, to get the very latest right here on GB News, so you don't need to go anywhere at all. Welcome back to State of the Nation. Let's just turn back to the UK, because I want to talk about something I've talked about on this show over the last few months, and it's something that I really do care about. It's about how the British state is hiding information from you, the hard-working, law-abiding British taxpayer. In fact, it's worse than that. Politicians and the expert class accuse you of misinformation or disinformation while they deliberately conceal information from you, especially when it comes to things that they'd rather we not talk about, like how mass immigration is impacting our communities and our country. This is why I fully support a forthcoming attempt by Shadow Justice Secretary Robert Jenrick coming next week to make statistics on crimes committed by migrants available to the British people for the first time ever. Now, he is proposing a law change that would force them to do exactly that, a move that we should say Reform UK MPs have also been calling for in the House of Commons. The amendment would require ministers to publish every quarter the nationality, country of birth, visa route, asylum status and method of entry of everyone convicted and sentenced to crimes in the Crown Court and Magistrates' Court. Similar transparency has already been introduced in several states in the United States of America and in Europe in countries like Denmark, with statistics in Denmark showing that crime rates of the worst offending migrant communities are 8 times higher than the native population. And it's a pretty consistent picture here too in the UK. In fact, it's now indisputable, thanks to a variety of freedom of information requests that have been submitted by independent campaigners, that many nationalities in the UK are significantly more likely to commit crime than British nationals. Now, look, you won't hear about this in Westminster, Oxford, Cambridge or Brighton, but for example, if you look at the years 2021 to 2023, Albanian migrants were almost 30 times more likely to commit crime than British nationals. Similarly, shocking figures were recorded for a wide range of nationalities. And when we zoom in on, for example, sexual offences, the statistics are truly shocking. Foreign nationals were responsible for up to a quarter of all sex crimes committed in Britain between 2021 and 2023, with drug offences also very high up on the list. Afghanistan topped the table of foreign nationalities committing sex offences in Britain. Afghans and Eritreans were around 20 times more likely than British nationals to commit those crimes, with people from Namibia and Chad not far behind. Now, when compared to the number of Brits involved in the same crimes, just take a look right down the bottom of that graphic, that little white part, that's British nationals. The disproportionality with those other national groups is seriously disturbing. But here's my question. Why are we even having to force this data out of the British state through freedom of information requests? Why is the state actually not making this information openly, readily available to British taxpayers who have to live with the consequences of the decisions being taken by politicians in Westminster who continuously insist that mass immigration is good for everybody? And why does the expert class in this country, which routinely prattles on about the importance of evidence, truth and knowledge, not want to make these things available to the British people when they happen to challenge the expert class's liberal views? Those are the questions I want to leave hanging over the show tonight, because it seems to me there's a lot of hypocrisy running through the expert class. And as ever, I want to hear your views tonight at gbnews.com/your say. Of course, reach us on X at GBNews. But I'm joined to discuss this very issue tonight by the chairman of Migration Watch UK, Alp Mehmet. Alp, why is it that the state does not simply make this information available to the people out there who are paying taxes, who are having to live with the consequences of the decisions that are being taken by both Labour and Conservative governments, and governments that are saying to people, as we saw after, for example, Southport, well, you're misinformed to worry about these issues, while not actually giving them the information that they could have to make up their own minds about these policies?
Yeah, absolutely. I couldn't agree more. They've always argued, and I suspect there may be some of that, we'll hear some of that this evening, but what the government says is it's unfair to produce these facts about individual nationalities, about certain groups, certain ethnic groups.
Denmark's doing it.
Other countries do it.
Germany's increasingly
I'm just saying why they argue against it. That we may actually end up sort of focusing on people who are perfectly innocent. Now, I accept that there is a danger of that. However, I also am keen to protect the British people. I'm also keen that those who are genuine actually have an easy passage into the country. That's why, unfortunately, what Robert Jenrick is trying to do just won't happen.
You think the blob, you think the state, the civil service will basically stop, they'll refuse to release this information?
The government will never allow that to go through Parliament. It just won't happen. However, what I would say is that what we should first and foremost do is revert to the sort of policies, the sort of measures that we used to have in place not so long ago. Anyone who comes here has to have a visa. The authority to enter, that must be vested in the immigration officer. We must interview people before they get here and refuse those that we believe maybe doing us harm.
This is how insane the situation is, as far as I'm aware. We are not even seriously scrutinising the criminal records of people who are coming into the country. We're not even adjusting the number of visas that we're giving, for example, to countries like Afghanistan or Eritrea, even though we know, based on the data that we can see, and I'm going to take a punt, I think the picture's probably even worse once we get hold of all of the available statistics and information. Why are we not adjusting the number of visas that we're giving out to those countries and saying, look, this isn't about demonising individuals, it's just saying that people from these countries, let's take Albania as an example, are disproportionately more likely than anybody else to commit crime.
Yeah, I agree with all that, Matt. I mean, what I'm saying is that if you had officials who are interviewing those who want to come here, and it doesn't matter that we haven't got embassies in Eritrea or whatever, the fact is, there are a number of places where it wouldn't be realistic. Nevertheless, a lot of those coming from Afghanistan, they're not coming direct from Afghanistan, they're coming from other safe countries. What we should do is stop them at the border, have a very quick interview and establish that they're not asylum seekers, they're not genuinely coming here, and refuse them and send them back to the safe country they've come from.
I have a quick question as well that maybe somebody can help me answer. Zoe Groneveld, Esther Kreku. When are we getting the BBC verified video on migration and crime? Because we get all of this talk endlessly about disinformation, misinformation, post-truth politics. Basically, views and attitudes that the elite class don't like are wrapped up as being misinformed people. But if the state was so confident about these decisions that it's making, it would just get all of the information out there. It would say, here you go. Here's the evidence, here's the stats.
Well, look, I think data, the more data you have, the better, right? The more data for the police or social services or whatever, the better. But the problem is you need your data to be fully contextualised. And if you're just publishing the data of nationalities without contextualising it, so compare it to somebody...
How do you contextualise the fact that Afghans are 20 times more likely to commit rape?
OK, so if you have somebody who's come over from a war-torn country, what sort of support were they given when they arrived? What adverse childhood experiences might they have had? How long have they been in the UK? All these things can impact their propensity to commit crime.
Problem with it. We shouldn't have to tolerate any of it. And I think it's about making the state accountable. If you see that these certain nationalities commit certain crimes disproportionately, well, then what is the state doing about it? A quarter of our prison spaces right now, we talk about overcrowding, are full of foreign criminals. First thing, deport. If our prisons are overcrowding, we should never be looking to try and get petty thieves off the street. We should be saying who shouldn't be here, who shouldn't be taking up these resources. That's the first thing. Secondly, we should have a zero tolerance for any sort of foreigner committing any crimes. But because once you've whittled that down, then actually what you'll reveal to the British public is actually there are a lot of British nationals committing crimes that are also unpalatable. So for the grooming gangs, for example, a lot of them were British nationals. So it wouldn't just be like, oh, Pakistanis are committing that, because that's what the graph would have shown, but it's actually showing Afghans and Eritreans. It will make the British state accountable, and it would allow us to have an adult conversation. No one is saying that just because you're a foreigner, you're more likely to commit a crime, but it's about knowing your place and knowing what the British society should tolerate. We shouldn't tolerate any foreigners committing crime. We also have to take responsibility for our own nationals committing crimes.
I completely agree with you, but there is this point about transparency and accountability, and the reason I keep going on about this issue, and viewers know this, is, and I don't want to pick on you as a representative of the left, Zoe, but the left talks endlessly about transparency, trust the experts, don't be disinformed, don't be misinformed, but then they're concealing all of this data from people, which and this is what makes it worse. They've got this information. It's taking independent campaigners like the Centre for Migration Control and others to have to submit freedom of information requests to the state, which is being paid for by taxpayers to get the information that taxpayers should be given anyway.
But I think it can be cherry picking, right? Because there are other things, other bits of data that are collected that aren't published about people who commit crimes here in the UK. Well, for example, your income tax bracket. That's not the sort of thing we would publish, but it might be quite useful.
I don't care how much money a rapist makes. If they're from outside the UK, UK and they commit that
but my
crime.
point is there can be correlations with things, and sometimes the publishing of the data doesn't necessarily help the issue at hand. It can just inflame tensions when it's not properly.
So there we are. So this is the view that it will inflame tensions out. It will inflame tensions.
Well, I think what I suggested, not quite so eloquently, Zoe. That doesn't matter, I think, if we're going to inflame tensions. The fact is that we should put the interests and the safety, the security of British people,
but then you need to give a full account of the picture. You need to contextualise it.
Living here. And the reason why the government won't reveal all these facts and figures and is not more transparent is because they're afraid that they will be forced into actually doing something about it.
I think the only thing I want to know and taxpayers want to know is, are people respecting the laws of this land or are they not?
But if you can also find data that shows you a clear link, say, for example, adverse childhood experiences and the link between that and people going on
Why is that our problem?
No, because it can help us fight, because it can help us prevent crime, which is surely the point here, right?
It's not our responsibility to try and fight the crime for people that are in this country that are not British nationals committing crimes. The reason why I'm saying this is because imagine we've got these league tables of all the people committing crimes and all the individuals have been identified. They've committed the crime, they have been expelled from the country because they don't have a right to be here. Do you know what you have a league table saying who's committing the most rapes? Oh, it's British nationals. Then you can ask the state,
we already know that's true.
Hold on, what are you doing to hold these people to account? I don't really care where you're coming from. I care what the state is doing to hold people to account. That's my problem. Well, I'm not going to look at an Afghan and be like...
The majority of criminals in this country are British-born,
but that's because most people in this country are British-born.
I agree, but I'm saying you can cherry-pick the data. Actually, we have a problem with people committing, for example, violent offences in this country. We have people with sexual misconduct, sexual offences in the country. Why aren't we focusing our attention on how we prevent those incidents from taking place
because
in the first place?
We need to clear... I'm sorry.
A quarter of all sexual offences in this country are committed by people from outside of the UK.
All sexual offences are terrible. Shouldn't we want to stop all of them? Why are we focusing on a subset?
The British state has a responsibility to the British people. In order to get to the root of the problem, you need to clear the field.
Absolutely.
There should be no conversation about why did this Afghan person commit a rape? You shouldn't be here, period. We need to clear the field so we can get to the root cause of issues that are caused by our own people.
Well, I think we can all agree that we need a stronger border security system where people are checked before they go in, obviously. But if we're talking about preventing crime, we're talking about keeping people safe.
So if an Afghan migrant came here and raped a British girl, that Afghan migrant should be allowed to stay in the UK.
He could have raped an Afghan girl. I don't care. You shouldn't be in the UK.
Well, you said we should contextualise.
You just said that.
We should contextualise.
No, I'm talking about the data. You can't just publish a load of data and not break it down and say, actually, let's look at, for example, Afghanis. That in that case, you might have more people coming from a war-torn country. They might not speak the language. They might not have assimilated. They might have adverse childhood experiences, poverty,
The debate will indeed carry on. Let me just abuse my position as presenter. My view is very simple. Break the law, you go. Anyway, after the break, we're going to be going back to Mark White to get the very latest from Israel and what is a troubling and deeply shocking evening. We're going to be getting the very latest. Just stay there in 1 minute.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation, because the failure is...
You're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff. Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood. So join me on Jubes & Co. weeknights at 6 p.m, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Britain's newsroom, weekday mornings from 9:30.
Well, Parliament is going to debate whether halal slaughter should be banned. The debate will take place next month. It comes as the method required to produce halal meat is non-stun slaughter, which some argue is too painful for the animal.
Well, a government petition calling for its ban has exceeded 100,000 signatures, and activists say that animal welfare must come before religious exemptions. So we're asking, should halal slaughter be banned in the UK?
Let's talk to the political commentator Charlie Downs and the co-chairman of the Muslim Jewish Forum, Greater Manchester, Mohammed Amin. Mohammed, if we could talk to you first, could you just explain what it involves, the slaughter, when it's a halal?
Yes, both halal slaughter, which is practiced by Muslims, and kosher slaughter, which is practiced by Jews, involve killing an animal that is otherwise fully conscious by cutting its throat with, in the Jewish case, they're very strict about a single cut. Islam is not as strict about whether it's a single cut or multiple cuts, and then the animal bleeds to death and dies.
It sounds cruel.
It sounds cruel, but when people have tried to carry out tests to assess levels of pain using electrodes in the brain, etc., there's no evidence that it is actually cruel that animals suffer any more pain than if they're killed by, for example, having a bolt through the head.
Well, can you just explain the religious significance of why you do it that way? What is the point? Why couldn't you just do it in a more, some would argue, humane way? Is there a religious significance?
Yes, there is a religious significance. If you pick up and read your Old Testament, you will see a clear categorical prohibition against consuming blood.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Good Afternoon Britain isn't just about us. The wonderful thing about this programme is it's about everyone watching. It's an interactive programme.
Well, there absolutely is something to see here, and we're going to be talking about it more.
Whether it's breaking royal news, please bring us up to date, or indeed a particularly punchy speech in the House of Commons.
Very, very curious.
We bring it to you live, and then we bring you live reaction as well.
That's Good Afternoon Britain, weekdays from midday.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Well, good evening, everybody. Welcome back to State of the Nation, right here on GB News with me, Matt Goodwin. Tonight, we have seen some very shocking scenes coming from the Middle East. Iran has launched hundreds of ballistic missiles tonight at Israel. All Israeli citizens have been ordered into bomb shelters. We can now speak again, and we will continue to speak with GB News Home and Security Editor Mark White throughout the show to get the latest. Mark, what are you hearing tonight? What's the latest?
Well, the very latest word from the Home Front Command in Israel is an all clear for the moment to Israeli citizens, telling them that they can leave their air raid shelters for the time being, but of course not to wander too far away from the safety of those shelters. I mean, to be honest, you're never far away from a shelter in Israel. They're every few meters. Buildings all have shelters. You're looking there at live images over Tel Aviv, and I believe the right-hand image may be Bethlehem. We can confirm that Prime Minister Sir Keir Starmer has spoken to Donald Trump this evening. In a readout, the Downing Street spokesperson said the leaders discussed the military action in the Middle East overnight and agreed on the importance of diplomacy and dialogue. Updating on his conversations with partners today, the Prime Minister reiterated the UK's grave concerns about Iran's nuclear programme. So the leaders looked forward to meeting again at the G7 in Canada next week. But of course, things are moving much faster than that at the moment. Israeli sources being quoted by a number of news outlets now suggesting that the US has been involved in helping defend Israel from these ballistic missile waves that have come from Iran this evening. There's no reports or indication yet of British involvement. There was some suggestion earlier that RAF Typhoon jets might have been involved, but that has not been confirmed by the Ministry of Defence, by Downing Street. We're being steered away from that at the moment, but we will discover clearly in the sort of the minutes and hours ahead whether the UK has been sucked into this as well to come to the aid of Israel. But for the moment, 2 waves of ballistic missiles launched from Iran towards Israel have been intercepted, mostly successfully, it seems. There have been some impacts on the ground, but the Israel Defense Forces have tried to reassure the public that what they're seeing and hearing are interceptions with their missile array system that has intercepted and brought down these ballistic missiles, for the most most part, with debris from some of the missiles impacting the ground. 7 people lightly or moderately injured in the Tel Aviv area. An Israeli military spokesman said tonight that Iran will pay a heavy price for attacking civilian areas in Israel.
Mark, it seems that
as I say,
there's
we
likely
just want to keep.
Sorry, Mark, I was just going to say, it seems that there's likely to be a reaction to these events by Israel in the coming hours or days. Has there been any discussion at all about what that counter-reaction might look like, about what might indeed be coming conceivably as early as tonight or tomorrow from Israel going the other way towards Iran?
Well, I think, as you know, senior officials have been saying now, there will be a reaction to the fact that they say military areas were, civilian areas were specifically targeted by the Iranians. But remember, we are in what is a campaign at the moment by Israel that they've said will last days, potentially up to 2 weeks, until they achieve their aim. And their aim, they say, is to degrade and dismantle as much as they can of Iran's nuclear program, despite Iran's protestations over the years that that nuclear program is purely for civilian and peaceful purposes. Few in the West believe that is the case. Indeed, all intelligence that Western governments have points to Iran involved in making nuclear weapons, or at least attempting to get that capability.
Great. Well, thank you, Mark White. We will indeed keep hearing from you throughout the show so we can stay up to date with these events. Still to come on the show tonight, Labour Minister Darren Jones has said he was misrepresented after he suggested that most small boat migrants are women and children. But unfortunately, Darren, we've got the receipts and I'm about to show them to you.
Dinner under the stars tonight?
That reminds me of our travel insurance.
You mean All Clear Skies?
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News travel destinations forecast.
Temperatures are on the rise this week, particularly across parts of Spain and Portugal. It's likely we'll see heatwave conditions over the coming days. And with the hot temperatures comes plenty of sunshine, particularly across Spain, Portugal, though we can't rule out a few showers across southern parts of France, northern parts of Italy on Saturday. But otherwise, it's plenty of hot sunshine, particularly across Italy, where we'll start to see temperatures move into the mid-30s. And that sunshine is set to continue into next week, along with the hot weather.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News travel destinations forecast.
Hello and welcome to the latest update from the Met Office for GB News. We have seen the heat and humidity build during the last few days, and overnight that breaks down with the risk of torrential thunderstorms, large hail and gusty winds, as well as frequent lightning in places. Developments are already occurring across northern France, and they are drifting northwards across parts of the UK overnight. It's during the evening that the greatest risk of these torrential thunderstorms occurs through East Anglia as well as Kent. Always uncertainty with these kinds of situations in terms of exactly where the thunderstorms will track, but where they do hit, risk of severe impacts. And it's not just the southeast. Other parts of the UK are likely to see heavy rain overnight, rumbles of thunder, as well as some gusty winds. But by the start of Saturday, many of the heavy showers are moving northwards. A wet start for eastern and southeastern Scotland. Some heavy rain out there for Perth and Edinburgh first thing. Drier for the western coast of Scotland and the Western Isles, and also drier towards the west of Northern Ireland, but in the east, some heavy rain first thing. Showers developing from the word go through northern England, parts of Wales, as well as the south and southeast. We could see further showers at times during the morning, but the general idea through Saturday is for the wettest of the weather to drift north, and it's across northern England and southeast Scotland where there's the greatest risk during Saturday afternoon of further heavy showers, thunderstorms, as well as some gusty winds. But towards the southeast, drier by the end of the day with some sunshine and still some warmth, 26 or 27 Celsius. Elsewhere, the rain and showers overnight gradually peters out, so that Sunday starts off much quieter. We're going to see plenty of sunshine first thing. Further showers are likely to develop as the day goes on. Hit and miss scattered showers, not quite as lively as the next 24 hours. And then we've got higher pressure building in from the south for Monday, Tuesday, drier and warmer for most of us.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
He can say whatever he wants.
A straight-talking show where all voices are heard.
And, you know, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country.
There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor.
Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Daubney, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m, weekdays, here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to State of the Nation tonight on GB News with me, Matt Goodwin. Well, Labour Minister Darren Jones has spoken out on X tonight, claiming that his views on illegal migration have been misrepresented after his appearance on last night's Question Time. Posting earlier this evening, Jones said, of course the overall majority of people arriving illegally on small boats are men, but not north of 90% as a Reform representative claimed. On BBC Question Time, I shared a story from my visit to the Border Security Command about a dinghy that arrived mostly carrying women, children and babies who had suffered horrific burns. I'm happy to clarify this, given how this is now being misrepresented. Labour committed new funding this week to secure our borders, while Reform have voted against giving our police the powers needed to smash the gangs, fueling this vile trade. Misrepresented, Darren Jones says. Well, shall we take a look at what he actually said? Watch this.
When there are babies and children put into that position by human trafficking gangs who are coming across in the Channel with skin burns from the oil from those boats mixing with the salt seawater, I would ask any of you to look at those babies and children and say, go back where you came from. And when you see that the majority of the people in these boats are children, babies and women who have been... No, they're not. No, you have got to take... No, look, I get this is...
North of 90% of them are adult men.
Let me be... No.
I think he was pretty clear. He said the majority of people coming over in these boats, and I think the audience reaction there spoke volumes. Well, I'm going to talk about this with our panel tonight, political commentator Esther Craker and journalist and broadcaster Zoe Grunewald. Esther, what do you make of that?
Yeah, if I'm going to be generous, we'll just say it was a slip of tongue and he was painting a very niche scenario, because clearly the overwhelming majority are not women and children suffering from oil burns, you know, and having been forced onto the lifeboats by these evil people smugglers. They are evil people smugglers, but they're also getting a fair bit of it. I think the average amount that these people smuggling gangs are making a month is £1 million, which I think puts it into context how much there is to gain from just, you know, getting a dinghy and putting people across. And so this idea that, you know, Keir Starmer is going to smash the gangs, it's just like the drugs trade. You get drugs off the street and the next gang is going to get a hold of it. And it's about, you know, cutting off the demand as opposed to trying to stymie the supply when there's so much money to be made. I think at this point, this is probably the most toxic issue for the Labour Party, because how they've handled it, it feels like they're taking us for fools. If we are to believe that the country's finances are in the dismal state that it is, which I agree, I think it was political suicide for the government to say we're going to start with taking 200 quid from pensioners, you know, as a way to start cuts. Now, there are, of course, lots of pensioners that don't need the winter fuel payments, lots of wealthy pensioners. However, if we're doing that to save £1.6 billion, yet we're spending upwards of £8 billion on, you know, illegal migrants in hotels, asylum bills, legal aid, all of that, you have to start with your priorities and get your priorities right.
Absolutely.
The British public can stomach a lot, but you have to demonstrate to them that you're targeting the right areas instead of trying to take us for fools.
Absolutely.
I mean, it's just common sense.
Zoe, he came out today, Darren Jones, and said, well, I was misrepresented. I'm just going to go out there and say what's pretty obvious to everyone everybody who watched that he's misleading people. He wasn't misrepresented. He was very clear in saying a majority of people coming over in the small boats are women, children and babies, which raises the obvious question, why are Labour so obviously trying to mislead the country on this issue?
Well, I don't think that's quite fair. I mean, I think his wording maybe wasn't entirely clear. I haven't seen before the clip, so I don't know what the context was leading up to that. I don't know if he said that he'd been on a site visit and seen this, and I think it is good when ministers genuinely go and visit the points where these issues are happening and they experience it for themselves.
He was just citing one particular instance, which is like one out of the hundreds of boats.
But he had seen it himself, so he was talking about something he had experienced, which I think is a good thing for a minister to do.
But he's trying to downplay the severity of the crisis, let's be honest.
Well, I think he's saying that I think he's trying to clarify what he meant, and I think that is important. What I would say is, I think he raises a valid point, which is that there are genuine... I think we forget, in the amount that we talk about this, that there are genuine asylum seekers coming over who do not have routes into this country because they have been cut off, and who are falling into the hands, as Esther says, of these horrendous people smuggling gangs who are making money off people's misery and often people's death.
You could argue that it's not the people that actually have access to these people smuggling gangs and the kind of money you need to pay them that are the most in need. So I was making the point, if I had to craft an asylum system, women and children first, that just no question about it. And if you're talking about the kinds of people that you want, what about Afghan women that are under the Taliban rule, that are easier to integrate into society than grown, men who are more susceptible to violence in war-torn societies, who have more entrenched views that are harder to integrate into our society? No one is talking about that. You say that and you think, oh, men can't be asylum seekers. I'm sorry, we're seeing a parade of fighting-age men coming across the boats every time who, for some reason, were so desperate, but they still had the funds to pay people smugglers to do it. And then even the bigger point, how many people have died in the Channel, in the Mediterranean, being sponsored by these evil people smugglers? It's about time that we were just frank with the country about what's going on.
You can't disagree with that. Nobody thinks that the small boats, the small boats business machinery that is going on is in any way a good way to get people over in this country and is in any way benefiting it. Well, I mean, it's not an easy problem to solve. Rishi Sunak made it the pinnacle for which the government's success that he was overseeing would ride, and he completely failed. It is not an easy problem to solve.
You know what? I never thought I would sit here and defend Rishi Sunak, but actually I am going to defend Rishi Sunak because that is not true. What he did with the illegal migration bill, let's be clear, is he said detain and deport, and deport was to Rwanda. Labour did not even bother to wait and see if Rwanda would make a difference.
It was unworkable. It didn't work. It got held up in the court. The only way to go over that was to...
Nobody waited to see. They just got rid of it.
It also cost so much money to the taxpayer to take a relatively...
How much money are we spending on hotels?
But if I could just finish my point, because I do keep getting cut off, and I'm trying to make this point, that it isn't an easy problem to solve. It requires, I think, a raft of measures, including much tighter border security. We need to look at what sort of routes we have for what kinds of people and how we go about that. We need to have better cooperation with people on the other side of our borders, in Europe, for example, which we, hammered when we left the EU, and that's why the small boat crossings went up exponentially. But small boat crossings did go up exponentially after
that's not fair on the Belgians and the Dutch, who we've had excellent cross-border cooperation.
But France clearly is where these border crossings come from.
That's the anomaly, not because our cross-border alliances are not good.
As well.
Here's the thing.
And we need to we also need to fund our asylum system and our immigration system better, because it was deliberately underfunded by the Tories because it wasn't politically...
That's not the problem here. We become very myopic when we talk about these issues, because we think, we just have to... It's set in our mind that we have to follow a certain route. Let's look at countries that have done this properly, like Australia, like the Australian consultants that we hired in the previous Conservative government to try and tackle this issue. In 2012, there was cross-party cooperation, i.e. the Labour Party and the Liberal Party in Australia agreed that this was a problem that needed to be solved. And so what they did was they sent all these people that were coming to Australia via these boats to a third island. It didn't matter where they came from. It didn't matter if their passport happened to be eaten by a dog or a shredder. They went there. And in the space of a few months, they spent 800 million Australian dollars on this, a hefty sum. But in the space of a few months, the numbers were down to basically zero. It is not about asking the French or having more cooperation or sending them another 500 million quid, because we've done that with the Belgians and it seems to be working. It seems to be something on the French side which we can reasonably ignore, because at the end of the day, the ultimate priority is the British public and
the borders. But one of the reasons our version of that, which was the Rwanda scheme, which was a similar kind of idea,
I didn't agree with the Rwanda scheme. I completely agree with you.
Our obligations under the ECHR, and that throws up a whole new mess of problems, because you might just say, well, let's just leave the ECHR, let's just do away with it. But then you have the problem of Northern Ireland. You have other international obligations.
That's not true. We're running out of time. We can easily overcome the Good Friday problem with ECHR by passing legislation in the UK that will deal with that issue.
But this is the
reality is nobody on the left wants to do the radical big stuff that is required to fix our border crisis. We will debate this continuously on this show, you and I, and Esther as well, because we love to debate on this show. That's what it's all about. Coming up, we are going to just quickly head back to Israel to get the latest from Mark White. And plus, we're going to be joined by Sarah Elizabeth Dill, international human rights lawyer and war crimes specialist, and Amjad Taha, political analyst of Middle East affairs, just in one moment to get some more of this debate going. I'll see you shortly.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, you didn't say that, Dave.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good Afternoon Britain isn't just about us. The wonderful thing about this programme is it's about everyone watching. It's an interactive programme.
Well, there absolutely is something to see here, and we're going to be talking about it more.
Whether it's breaking royal news,
Please bring us up to date.
or indeed a particularly punchy speech in the House of Commons,
Very, very curious.
we bring it to you live, and then we bring you live reaction as well.
That's Good Afternoon Britain, weekdays from midday.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
So he can say whatever he wants.
A straight talking show where all voices are heard.
And, you know, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country.
There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor.
Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Daubney, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m. weekdays, here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Westminster's full of talk, but out here, it's the real world.
Am I allowed to talk then?
No, that's it. This is where it matters, real people and real lives. That's what politics is all about.
In fact, has Trump made a good start? No.
Straight answers, no spin, and just a couple of pints.
How many fingers have I got up?
About 10. So join me for Lee Anderson's Real World every Friday at 7 p.m. only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
This is Britain's Newsroom, where your voice matters.
It's just astonishing. With expert analysis and honest opinion, we don't just keep you informed.
We bring you unique perspectives you won't see anywhere else.
Can't argue with any of that. When the news happens, it happens here.
On Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 a.m.
Only on GB News.
Tomorrow, join GB News as we mark the King's official birthday. Trooping the Colour, hosted by Charlie Peters, Miriam Cates and me, Cameron Walker, live from Buckingham Palace. From 10 a.m. tomorrow on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to State of the Nation tonight on GB News with me, Matt Goodwin. Well, let's go back to the Middle East because, unfortunately, we are used to seeing instability in that region of the world. But this latest escalation between Iran and Israel could be very serious indeed. Arguably, indeed, it is already very serious from what we've been seeing on our television screens tonight. Well, we're joined now by human rights lawyer Sarah Elizabeth Dill and political analyst of Middle East affairs, who will join us shortly. Sarah, what's your initial reaction to what we're seeing on the television screens tonight, particularly from places like Tel Aviv?
Precisely. So the one key thing to remember about Tel Aviv is that Israel has its military sites in the middle of the city. Their IDF headquarters, another base, are right within civilian infrastructure. That being said, just as Israel strikes as Iran earlier today, which targeted civilian apartment buildings and such, a military engaging in a campaign must ensure that if there is a military objective, that any harm to civilian objects does not outweigh any benefit from targeting that military objective. So obviously that poses a problem as strikes on military targets in Israel, you've got civilian areas. And so even if Israel strikes this morning were a violation of international law, Iran, in its right to self-defense, would still need to comply with the laws of armed conflict. And it's not a you did wrong, I did wrong. So Iran also has an obligation to abide by international humanitarian law.
And it's a difficult question, but what's your best guess on what happens next here? Because obviously we've seen a response from Iran. We are now almost certainly going to see a counter-response, if you like, from Israel. There will be some action perhaps as early as tonight, maybe tomorrow, maybe in the coming weeks. But what's your read on where we go next here? And also, if I can, what's your hunch as to what Israel's objectives longer term might be here? Because there is obviously the nuclear disarmament issue, but there's also the point about is this heading towards some kind of attempt at regime change within Iran? What's your sort of thoughts on some of that?
So the first question, I think, Israel has told us what they're going to do. They've said prepare for 2 weeks of possible attacks. They've said this evening that they will be responding with more attacks on Iran. It came out a few minutes ago that the United States' involvement in defending Israel was confirmed, so that the U.S. was involved in defending the strikes from Iran. You have the other nations in the region, Jordan not allowing anything to go over their airspace from either side. And so we're going to see more strikes from Israel. They've stated that they will target more Iranian leaders. We also anticipate, unfortunately, and I was just watching the UN Security Council hearing that's going on right now, and more attacks on the nuclear facilities, which obviously is very troubling, given that the damage that's been done so far has been quite extensive. Radiation levels have not escalated, but further attacks will destabilize that. And so you risk radiation leaks throughout the region.
Right. Well, I'm just going to bring in the panel, political commentator Esther Kraku and journalist and broadcaster Zoe Grunewald. Zoe, what's your read on where Israel goes next here?
Well, I think a lot of it depends on how supported they feel by the US. So, clearly this is going to be retaliatory, and they've said that they're going to continue to strike for a number of weeks. I think there is a feeling probably from Israel that Iran is weakened, and this might be, with the backing of Trump, a possibility to start reorganising Iran or reorganising that part of the Middle East in something that they hope would be more sympathetic to the Israeli regime. But, of course, this depends on Trump. It depends on what Trump feels serves the US people as well, what Trump feels serves the rest of the world. And, of course, here in the UK, the question is, where do we fall? Because, actually, over the last few weeks, we've been quite bullshit. We've been bullshit with Israel over Palestine. And we, already are involved in a war in Europe. There are going to be questions about the level of support we have with issues in the Middle East. So
but the other group of people in all of this are the Iranian people. I mean, they might not want to be led by, Islamist maniacs who are, openly anti-Semitic.
And same with, the Israelis. There are lots of people in Israel who will not be supportive of Netanyahu's actions, whether it be in Palestine, whether it be in Iran. So, yes, across the board, there isn't an easy consensus here in any part of any of these countries.
Just before I come back to Sarah, Esther, what's your read on this?
Yeah, I mean, on Iran is a friend to no one, and I don't think anyone wants to see Iran with nuclear weapons. I think the fact that we've got to this point where Israel feels the need to do this with the backing of the US shows a huge lack of oversight on basically all Western allies to have allowed Iran to get to the point where they could fund Hamas to the extent that they could commit the October 7th attacks, and to the point where they can enrich uranium to this extent. And I'm telling you, the people that are rubbing their hands with glees are the Saudis and the Emiratis, and I suppose to a lesser extent the Omanis and other countries in the Middle East that don't want to see a strength in Iran that can develop nuclear weapons. The question is this sustainable for Israel on all fronts, just militarily, politically? Netanyahu's undoubtedly still using this as a political lifeline, and people are going to get sick of it.
Well, let's hear your thoughts on that, Sarah.
I think the arguments that Israel made in terms of where Iran is at with its capabilities, I think that's a farce. Netanyahu himself this morning in his speech stated that it was probably a year, and then he seemed to retract as he realized what he was saying. And if he was going to meet that imminency requirement, he said, oh, possibly months. And given the fact that you had ongoing negotiations, Steve Witkoff was scheduled to fly this weekend to continue negotiations with Iran. Yes, we were on the 61st day, but when you have meetings scheduled 2 days later, the fact that the Trump administration even told Israel, do not strike. Secretary Rubio's comments this morning, very upset about this. I think that for Israel to have taken this, but the news came out this afternoon as well that the two-state solution talks have now been postponed because of what's happening. So that's another benefit that Israel got out of this. Israel is being a strategic player. I think the points that they are in having their own issues with domestic problems, growing unrest over what they're doing in Gaza, and this is a way for them, whether Netanyahu saw this as a way to gain support domestically or turn the world's attention away from other things.
OK, well, we will continue to watch closely indeed throughout this evening and, of course, tomorrow on GB News. And we're just going to turn to Patrick Christys, who's up next. Patrick, what have you got coming up tonight?
Well, great show. I am joined live with my wonderful studio audience. Hello, everybody. Thank you very much. Well, goodness gracious me. Where to start tonight? I think we have to start with the potential outbreak of World War III. We're going to be taking you live to Tel Aviv. We're going to be keeping you right up to date there. We're also expecting breaking lines from the latest Pakistani rape gang saga. Will the Home Office commit to deporting those monsters? We're going to have to wait and see about all of that. And 1,000, mostly men, despite what that Labour minister wants you to believe, mostly men, broke into Britain across the Channel today alone. This can't carry on, can it? How much longer can this go on for? We've got all of that and much, much more coming your way for the next hour. Are you all excited? Yeah! Well, I think we might as well crack on then, haven't we? I'll see you in a couple of minutes' time. Take care.
Expect a warm front, moving from the kitchen right through to the rest of the house. Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello and welcome to the latest update from the Met Office for GB News. We have seen the heat and humidity build during the last few days, and overnight that breaks down with the risk of torrential thunderstorms, large hail and gusty winds, as well as frequent lightning in places. Developments are already occurring across northern France, and they are drifting northwards across parts of the UK overnight. It's during the evening that the greatest risk of these torrential thunderstorms occurs through East Anglia as well as Kent. Always uncertainty with these kinds of situations in terms of exactly where the thunderstorms will track, but where they do hit, risk of severe impacts. And it's not just the southeast. Other parts of the UK are likely to see heavy rain overnight, rumbles of thunder, as well as some gusty winds. But by the start of Saturday, many of the heavy showers are moving northwards. A wet start for eastern and southeastern Scotland. Some heavy rain out there for Perth and Edinburgh first thing. Drier for the western coast of Scotland and the Western Isles, and also drier towards the west of Northern Ireland, but in the east, some heavy rain first thing. Showers developing from the word go through northern England, parts of Wales, as well as the south and southeast. We could see further showers at times during the morning, but the general idea through Saturday is for the wettest of the weather to drift north, and it's across northern England and southeast Scotland where there's the greatest risk during Saturday afternoon of further heavy showers, thunderstorms, as well as some gusty winds. But towards the southeast, drier by the end of the day with some sunshine. There's still some warmth, 26 or 27 Celsius. Elsewhere, the rain and showers overnight gradually peters out, so that Sunday starts off much quieter. We're going to see plenty of sunshine first thing. Further showers are likely to develop as the day goes on. Hit and miss scattered showers, not quite as lively as the next 24 hours. And then we've got higher pressure building in from the south for Monday, Tuesday, drier and warmer for most of us.
A positive outlook through the night will power through to a bright day ahead. Boxed Home Battery Storage, sponsors of weather on GB News.
We're kick-starting summer with your chance to win our biggest cash prize to date, as there's an incredible £54,321 in tax-free cash to be won. What would you spend it on? A brand new car, the holiday of a lifetime, or just sit back, relax and remove some of those day-to-day financial stresses? For a chance to win £54,321 cash, text cash to 63225. One entry costs £2.50 plus one standard network rate message, or text bonus to 63225. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start at £2.50. Call 0903 686 3232. Calls cost £2.50 plus your network access charge, or post your name and number to GB14 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 4 p.m. on the 1st of August. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand.
It's Patrick Christys tonight, and here we do things differently. It's explaining the absolute madness of this, doesn't it? It's explosive. I mean, this is very good. It's lively.
850. Your government sat there, Sean, and it did nothing.
It's controversial. And the Middle East has been in turmoil since before I was born. It's everything you need to kickstart your evening. Everyone's had their Weetabix tonight. I love to see it. That's Patrick Christys tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation, isn't it?
No,
because the failure is
you're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back,
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
and we do not shy away from the difficult stuff. Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood. So join me on Jubes and Co weeknights at 6 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Westminster's full of talk, but out here, it's the real world.
Am I allowed to talk now?
No, that's it. This is where it matters. Real people and real lives. That's what politics is all about.
The fact is Trump made a good start. No.
Straight answers, no spin, and just a couple of pints.
How many fingers have I got up?
About 10. So join me for Lee Anderson's Real World every Friday at 7 p.m. only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good Afternoon Britain isn't just about us. The wonderful thing about this programme is it's about everyone watching. It's an interactive programme.
Well, there absolutely is something to see here, and we're going to be talking about it more. Whether it's breaking royal news, please bring us up to date, or indeed a particularly punchy speech in the House of Commons.
Very, very curious.
We bring it to you live, and then we bring you live reaction as well.
That's Good Afternoon Britain, weekdays from midday.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Thank you very much for coming. Thank you. All right, here we go. Well, it's 9 p.m. I'm Patrick Christys. Hello and welcome to